didn't go as well as I thought it was gonna go, but it went pretty well. I'm satisfied. Hi, welcome back and welcome to Vlogmas Day 6. I'm Fran, this is Fran Nook in the pages, and today I have for you my November, non-fiction November wrap-up. I didn't read all the books that were on my November TBR. Unfortunately, I didn't get to all of them, in part because I had to start preparing for Vlogmas, otherwise I would have gone insane this month, which it's not over yet. Let's just wait before we can count our chickens. And in part because I had to read some things for work, which was great, and I loved those things, but they didn't really fit in the non-fiction November bonanza. But anyways, let's see what I did get to in the month of November. First, I just quickly want to show you my DNF, which is not a, ooh, I really hated this book, I am not gonna read it ever again, I put it down, it's dead for me. No, it's none of that. It is just a book that was a bit different from what I was expecting, and I realized that only after I actually opened it and started reading it, and that is the Stylist's Guide to New York City by Sibella Court. I thought it was gonna be kind of a coffee table book that you flip through and you get to see New York, some peculiar things about the architecture, about some shops, about some streets and all of that. And I thought it was gonna be, you know, like accompanied by so many photos that would show what Sibella Court was talking about. It wasn't quite that. It was actually a guide, like a travel guide, as in, okay, you go down 21st Street and then you turn right and you have this shop, and then if you keep going you will find that other thing. It was that kind of guide, and if you're not holding it while you're right there in New York, I don't quite see the purpose, I guess. And another thing that kind of bothered me a bit is the fact that when she is talking about certain shops or streets or whatever, then you have these images that, first of all, they're not always clear because, as you can see, the colors are pretty dark, but they also are not always related to the text, or you can't understand or see or figure out in what way they're related to the text. So you would look at something and you wouldn't know what you're looking at, if it's a shop, if it's an ornament in a shop, or which shop we're talking about. It's like, it's not clear. So I don't know, I still feel like it's a good book as in an object that you can own and that you can flip through, but in terms of reading it and actually connecting the images to the text, I don't think that that was well done. I don't know if or when I'll pick it up, but I'm still glad to own it, and I might flip through it at times whenever I want a taste of New York, but I don't know how much sense it makes as a book-ish product that is supposed to be read. If you don't know New York very well, even as a tourist, I feel like this would confuse you quite a lot. Then I listened to the audiobook of Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Caitlin Doughty. Caitlin Doughty is a mortician. She worked in the morgue. She is, I think, currently working at a funeral home, and she also has a YouTube channel which I haven't checked out yet, but I want to. And this book is, well, it is basically a collection of questions that kids have asked her throughout the years, and she replies to these questions in a very serious, scientific, reasonable way. These are the weirdest questions, such as, will my cat eat my eyeballs after I'm dead? Or what happens if you die in space? Do we still keep digesting after we die? Or why do we eat chicken but we don't look kindly on cannibals? Things like that. It is just, you know, those kind of very honest, blunt, weird questions that only kids can ask, and she doesn't treat them as kids. I mean, the book has an overall humorous tone, so it was very funny to listen to, which is a tough thing to achieve because you're still talking about dead people and death, and that can be very macabre, especially if you have a hard, tough relationship with death and thinking about death. Hello? And it was funny and kind of lighthearted, but still very respectful. And as I was saying, she treats kids like people who can understand. If you tell them how it is and why, and if you explain the scientific reasons and how it actually is in real life, then they can understand and they can learn without being scared of death or dead people. And it was incredible. I truly loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and she has written, I think, 2 more books, and I really want to read them because I loved this one. I know that the other 2 books, they're more for adults. They have a different tone and different kind of content, still regarding death, of course. And I'm still curious, and I cannot wait to read them because, again, I loved this one very much and I gave it 5 stars. I know that the light is going down, but we're gonna plow through because yes. Then I listened to the audiobook of Everybody Else is Perfect by Gabrielle Korn. The previous one was narrated by the author Caitlin Doughty, and this one was narrated by Gabor Zachman. I don't quite know what to think about this book. I'm not even sure about the rating. For now, I have settled on 3 stars, but it might be a little bit more, it might even be a little bit less. This is a memoir, so the author talks about her life, specifically the years of university, first jobs, and then when she was hired very young as the editor-in-chief of Nylon, which is this very famous fashion cultural magazine. She is a woman and she identifies as a lesbian, and so she mainly addresses how it was for her to work in such an environment that mainly revolves around women who are young, thin, white and straight. And despite the fashion industry revolves around women, it is also governed by and overpowered by the male gaze. So it's a very patriarchal structure, industry, and she had to deal with that, and particularly considering that she reached certain heights, like she was in charge of people, and these people were constantly trying to undermine her or disrespect her because she was too young, because she was a woman, because she wasn't thin enough, or she was too thin because she struggled with anorexia throughout these years. She also talks about what she tried to do to not fix all of that, but just to do her part in making at least the magazine she was working at more diverse in terms of color, in terms of featuring women of color, in terms of addressing issues that concern or that might interest more the LGBT community as well. She talks about capitalism, about the fashion industry, how we try to distance ourselves from certain trends or for the mainstream, but we're still a byproduct of the society that we live in. And whatever it is showed and represented and whatever it is featured in the media as, you know, a whole encompassing force affects us and the society we live in and the way we live. I am, however, conflicted. On one hand, I found it very interesting because she talked a lot about the history of certain things in the media, particularly Instagram. It was almost kind of like being at a lecture where you were learning things about the history of media, and also it was interesting just to really see what that industry, what that world is like from the inside. On the other hand, though, I had 2 main problems with it. First of all, it wasn't cohesive. It felt like reading a collection of separate articles that you might find on a magazine, like those long articles. And I'm guessing that's because she's the editor-in-chief of a magazine, so she has that writing, that's how it works for her, that's what she's used to, but I don't think it translated well in a book form. In the end, what it did for me was I found it very repetitive because she repeats some things about her life over and over again in different essays, in different articles throughout the book. And also she wasn't following a timeline since she was going by topic. So it was very confusing to put all the pieces together and to kind of have an overview of what her life was, of what her working path was. She managed to nail this unbalanced combination of being repetitive but also being confusing and not coming across as clear when it comes to her life and her working history. And the other problem I had is that, yes, she was talking about all these issues of, you know, men being in charge and thinking that they know what the readership is and what the readership wants, when that's not it. That's completely wrong. And the lack of diversity when it comes to, you know, class of the readership, social class of the readership, ethnicity, sexual orientation and identity, all these things, they were completely lacking, but she wasn't really saying what she did to fix that. She said a few things here and there, but there was, for instance, a moment in the book that kind of got stuck in my mind where she was saying that she was writing an article about weird sexual experiences, and she was interviewing women, but the crew that was there for the shooting of these interviews was all male. And of course she was just like not an intern, but like an entry-level position, so she couldn't really do anything to change that. And I was like, yes, but that's exactly part of the problem. Like, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you try to change that situation so that the person being interviewed wouldn't talk about her sexual experiences with like 10 men looking at her and feeling like she was being judged or something? So like, she was also kind of part of the problem. And I guess that's what she was trying to point out, that when you're in that industry, it's hard to change it from within, but then how does it change? It's like a snake biting its own tail. It's never gonna change if the people who are in it don't start to make a change, right? So I don't know, it left me very unsatisfied, and yeah, I gave it 3 stars, but it might be even less. I don't know, it didn't work as a book. I would have done a lot more editing regarding both the format, how the information was organized, and also like just the content. I don't know. I wasn't quite satisfied, and these are my thoughts. These are my very confusing thoughts. And the last book that I read for nonfiction November is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This is her memoir where she talks about the time when she was in an abusive relationship. And let me tell you, this was a very tough read. There were some chapters where I almost felt sick to my stomach because her partner was being so outright manipulative and psychologically, mentally, and at times also physically abusive and violent. And it was really, really tough to read because you just think that you're in a relationship with someone that you love, with someone that says that they love you, and at the same time they hurt you in such a deep, gut-wrenching way that it is so tough to read and to imagine. Carmen Maria Machado is queer, and this is a queer relationship, and she also talks about how queer relationships can be abusive and how that is easily overlooked and also ignored because, you know, like if you're a lesbian, for instance, you are not dealing with a man, which means there's no violence, because usually men are involved whenever you talk about domestic violence. But no, there is is violence in the queer community as well, and she talks about that. It is not believable if it happens and two women are involved. And apart from being a very needed, I think, and important book for all those reasons, it is also written in such a beautiful, mind-blowing way, because Carmen María Machado uses the metaphor of the dream house to shape in a different way each chapter. So for instance, there's a chapter that is called The Dream House as World Building, The Dream House as Deja Vu, The Dream House as Utopia, and so on and so forth. Some chapters are very short, some chapters are longer, and she writes in the second person, so it's like she's talking to herself, recounting these years of abusive relationship. But since it's a second person, it's like she's also talking to the reader. And so you are there, you are feeling almost not the abuse on yourself, but you can picture yourself there, you can feel it, you can feel yourself in her shoes when she was going through some very bad and traumatic episodes that she had to go through. And just on top of that, when people say, yeah, but how is it possible? Like when people tell you, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave this person behind? Why didn't you leave the house? Why didn't you go away from all that? And how hard it can be to explain that when you are in that situation, you just can't escape because you feel trapped, because you see no way out, because you still try to make excuses for that person that you love, even though they're being abusive and they're manipulating you and they're mistreating you in so many ways. My favorite chapter, the chapter that blew my mind in terms of creativity, in terms of writing style, in terms of how emotional it felt and how I felt like trapped and almost like afraid of what I was gonna find in the next page, was Dream House as Choose Your Own Adventure. Basically, they're in bed, Carmen is awake, and then the girlfriend wakes up and she stares at Carmen and she was like, you were moving all night, you kept me awake, you were touching me with your elbows and stuff. And from this scenario you have different options, like if you apologize, go to Paige. If you tell her that you could have woken you up, go to Paige. And there's one scenario where if you go to that page, it says, you shouldn't be on this page. There's no way to get here from the choices given to you. You flipped here because you got sick of the cycle, you wanted to get out. You're smarter than me. And it just, even right now, you can't see, but it's giving me chills, like it's giving me goosebumps in a very good and bad way, because it's just terrifying and it gives you an idea of what it can feel like to be in that kind of cycle, to feel that trapped. It was an incredible memoir. I would recommend it to everyone. I gave it 4.5 stars only because in the end she was switching from second person to first person, and it kind of just, I don't know, it kind of like made me feel a bit more disconnected from the story. I didn't understand why she did that, because it kind of disrupted the narrative thread, if it makes any sense. At least that's what I felt. And also because I feel like she uses very pointed references. It's not her fault. I'm not saying it is a fault. I'm just saying that she uses these very pointed references and they can be confusing, as in if you don't know prior to reading this book what she's talking about, then you wouldn't really understand. Like, it kind of got over my head. It might totally be me. I'm not intellectual enough to appreciate every component of this book, which is likely. But yes, at times it kind of got over my head and I kind of felt lost, as if she was just going a bit too far and that wasn't needed for the memoir. But at the same time, just the way she shaped each chapter to kind of reflect the metaphor that she was going for in that chapter, it was brilliant, it was genius, and I definitely recommend this book to everyone. Please go and read it because it's a read that you should, do at least once in your life. If you remember, in my nonfiction November TBR, I also talked about A Gentleman Jack book, another biography that of course talks about Anne Lister, who was a diarist, a landowner who lived in the beginning of the 19th century. I didn't get to it in November, but I am currently listening to it. I'm kind of alternating between that one and Stay Another Day by Juno Dawson, so I didn't get to it last month, but it's something that I am reading because I really wanted to, as I had said in that video, so I will talk about it at some point, don't you worry. And this is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Let me know if you have read any of these books that I've mentioned. Let me know if you participated in Nonfiction November, what you read for Nonfiction November, if you would recommend it. Please let me know in the comments because I would love to know. And before I go, a quick reminder to subscribe to my channel if you haven't, to like this video and share if you want, to click on the bell thingy to get notified whenever I upload a new video. You can follow me on social media. I have a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. You will find all this information in the description down below. And that's it. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you again tomorrow with another Vlogmas video, but until then, have a good one, take care, and keep reading. Warm hugs, bye!